All right, thank you very much for coming to this session. I know those days a lot of parties, but getting up like 8:30 is a really big deal. Um, Today, my topic is unifying VMware APIs for fast automation and DevOps. And folks know me, I've been doing a lot of VMware-related projects. And today, originally I tried to do like a live demo, but somehow we cannot bring my own laptop over here, so I cannot do it. But yesterday I captured a lot of screenshots, so we'll go through those screenshots along the way. So over here, required by VMware, I had to put this disclaimer. I believe you've gone through many sessions, so you don't need to read this again. So here is a little bit about myself. I used to work at VMware on the ecosystem engineering group, and I work with a lot of founders, some of my founders sitting here. Thank you very much. And then I joined a VC, Cisco ENC joint venture, and I worked a couple of years and then started my own. And when I working at VMware, I wrote a book, VMware VI and a vSphere SDK. And I also create the open source project called VI Java API. It's actually used by many different companies. If you see Solution Exchange, most companies using Java in the backend, and that's a natural fit. And also, I blog regularly on doublecloud.org. If you have any API-related question, go check. You may have an answer out there. And so doublecloud.incorporation is my company. So we specialize on the different products, especially the API family. So we have VI Java NG, ESX agent APIs, vSAN Java APIs, NSX APIs, and the REST API is something I'm going to talk about as well. And we also do the search engine. Along the way, we provide some free tools like ICE and reverse proxy and the VM deployer. So the VM deployer is something pretty new. It's a free tool. Feel free to give it a try. The reason we create this is because a few months ago, I visited a customer because I want to sell my search engine product. It's a package, it's an OVA. And then I promised him, say, half an hour, you'll be up and running. And I went there like half an hour, I still struggle with deploy the OVA, OVF. So when I come back, I create this tool, and we have a couple of iterations. So it's free, you can download from our website. There's a nice feature out there. And a lot of time when we use OVF tool, we struggle with different parameters. So this tool allows you to generate the OVF commands. So you don't need to worry about, say, hey, which parameter out there. So we automatically generate that for you. So give it a try. Let me know how it works. That's too much about myself and our product. So today's agenda, we'll go through the VMware API basics, and then we'll talk about the unification, and I will talk about 3 different API unification strategies. So VMware API is mostly management API. It's quite different from the execution API. So by saying management API, we know about the manager, right? The manager tells you what to do, and you do it, right? So same thing for the management API. You don't do the virtual machine creation. You tell VMware server to do that. So this is the difference of the execution API and management API. So keeping that in mind, so VMware API is actually exposed and closely bundled with VMware products. So a lot of folks over here, I believe, have developer background. So we know there's famous design pattern called model view controller, right? So in that case, the VMware product is more like a model, right? It exposes functionalities through different eyes, the interfaces, right? The GUI is one of them, the command line is one of them, right? API is, of course, one of them. So over the time, so I see the trend of building the GUI, people start to change. Used to, we have like API, and then people build a GUI over here and a command line over here. So if you look at company's product like Microsoft, they have changed the route to they build an API, and then they build a PowerShell command line on top of it, and then they build a GUI on top of it. So that's a streamlined way of doing things. The good thing is if you do the GUI and then you do something out there and then translate to command line, and then you can record those command line, right? And later on you can rerun it and you get automation for free. So that's the new way of design the interfaces. And in the management API space, the automation is really about two things. Find the right object or resources and then do something about it. It's just like a manager, right? Manager role is find the best people for the job and then let them do the job, right? So this is pretty much the same thing. So here are just two jobs, right? Find the right object and do something. So we'll talk more about later on how the database and search API can help this. And and also those days, I noticed like API is used more often than the command line. So basically, the more complex a system is, the more likely you're going to use the API directly instead of command line, because the API is easier to use, and sometimes they have a language binding on top of it, so that you can build a larger, stable system. Now here's challenges of using VMware APIs. So here I kind of talk about the challenges. Doesn't mean VMware hasn't done a good job. Actually, VMware has done an excellent job in release and maintaining those management APIs. So some of these stuff just come naturally by the APIs, by some factors I listed over here. So the complexity is one of the challenges, and then the consistency, right? And there are a couple others I'll talk about next slides. The complexity comes from many, many different factors, right? This look at the number of the APIs. Over the years, right, VMware has done a lot of the products. If you look at the product family today, there are just so many. I doubt there's anyone who can familiar with every API today or every product, right? So it's very hard. And so the number of API contribute to complexity, and also the granularity of the API set. Some of the product, they release a few APIs. The other day I was looking at the VMware Code website, and one product have like almost 10 API set out there. That is essentially a different aspect of that API, but list a different API name out there, which is, I think is too much. They should have grouped together into one API name. The versioning of API over the years, the product keep evolving, more features, more functionalities added to the product, and I think VMware has done an excellent job to maintain the back compatibility. Over the years, the old version of the API still work with the new product, right? So that's very hard to achieve, but VMware have done that. And the language bindings, a lot of people. We talk about the rest also, but at the end of the day, a lot of us still like to use language bindings, Java bindings, C#, and those language bindings, which is make our life much easier, right? And also there's official versus open source APIs in the community, right? Just one more factor to consider. Let's talk about the consistency. And there are different formats of VMware APIs in terms of the design, modeling, naming convention, all sorts of things. And also in a different API, the ID for the same entity may be different. Sometimes that presents some challenge as well. You need to find a way to translate those. Here's the navigability, because we talk about the automation is about two things: find the right object and then do something. And find the right object, you need to navigate through different objects in our system. And that can be a challenge, right? So how can you, initially you get the first object in the system, and then how you navigate to the right object you want to reach to. And if that's durable, how efficient is that, right? And there's just navigability is very important. We also like to cover a little bit the REST API issues VMware have right now. So VMware, the new trend is the REST API. So I look at quite a few VMware REST API today. I think the biggest challenge out there is the no modeling. Having said that, is you go look at a website and they say here's the document, and then there's a few hundred pages, and then you need to read through it. Here's the request, here's the response, right? But for program, if you want to do API and so you want something like language binding, and then it's not almost impossible to auto-generate those, right? Or some of the products I noticed there is modeling, like NSX. There's actually RAML modeling for NSX API. And that one, I downloaded and played with it, and I find 3 bugs out there. So basically, there's a JSON file, and then if you parse it, and it didn't go through. So that actually proved to me the model is something they created after they finished the project. Now, so in the VMware side, there's 2 directions of the APIs. One side is the SOAP-based. The vSphere API is the first one, and it's still the best in the virtualization management space. And we also have a couple of other APIs. Some of them maybe not well known, like ESX Agent Manager. The ESX agent is more like a driver for the ESX, but it's a package as a virtual machine. There's a storage policy-based management APIs, and the SSO APIs. And there's latest one is the vSAN API. vSAN API actually is use exactly same infrastructure as the vSphere API. And I think if you are familiar with the vSphere API, the vSAN API is actually very natural to use. We actually done some job to integrate those together. So when you use the vSAN API and the vSphere API, it just look as one API. You don't need to worry about anything else. There's a REST API based in the VMware side in the portfolio, like NSX Management API. They have a vRealize API, and recently, because I think the community is asking for the REST API for the vSphere itself, actually have vAPI. vAPI, there's in the portfolio, there are a couple of things like a tagging API, content library API, and plus the VCSA management API. So all REST-based. So here is a little comparison of the SOAP versus the REST. SOAP and REST API, they have a lot of in common. For example, they are based on HTTP. But they also present quite a lot of difference out there. So SOAP is very consistency, it's standard-based. And if you look at the SOAP itself, and sometimes it's hard to read, but it's actually, there's a real strict ideal define it. So it's very, very easy to co-generate the language binding. But for the REST, it's not the way. So you have to read through the document and then understand each field by yourself. So it's not very easy. In the VSTO, in the SOAP, we have VSTO as a definition language. In the REST side, there's a couple of them, but there's actually no standard. So a lot of people just say, hi, I'm doing REST, but they never think about the modeling side. So in a SOAP, you can use XML, and REST, you can use both JSON and the XML. But most cases, a lot of people just use JSON, which is the more popular than XML in a REST space. So we talk about the VMware APIs, the basics, and some difference of the REST and what the direction to go. And let's talk about what does it mean to be unified. I think to be unified, there mean a couple of things. I just list a couple of items over here. I think first is the same user experience, right? So if you have different APIs, you go there and start using it, and then you feel it's look like one. Or the other way is if you're familiar with one set of API, and then you go use the other, and they just come naturally. You don't need to relearn everything. That's the same experience, right? That comes down to if they're similar style, if they have the same format, And more importantly, if they have the same similar object modeling philosophy out there. And second thing is, do they have a consistent support for different language bindings? So we have many different APIs over here, and some of them support this set of languages, and the other support the other set of languages. Sometimes you find a Java binding over here, but no Java binding over here. So if you want to use a Java as the language to do the automation or DevOps across, and then you have a trouble out there. And the last one is the ID, right? So you have to identify different objects in different APIs. So can we make that consistent? That's very important. Now, I just put here like API consistency pyramid. So the very bottom, very basic, you need the same ID, same identification system for all the APIs. And then on top of that, you would like to have a similar or same modeling style. And then you can talk about, say, whether it's SOAP or the REST, which in my opinion is important, but not that important. So I show you why and next. And then you have a different language bindings. And if you can achieve those consistency, and then the API, is unified, and you have very good consistent user experience. So we'll talk about different unification strategies over here. The first, we'll talk about how you bridge the SOAP and the REST API. And second, there's some new technology API gateways and how you can leverage that. And the last one is the DB middle layer, how you use the database at a middle layer so to unify different APIs. So when you talk about how you unify the SOAP or the REST, right, there's just not many, logically, there are not many options, right? You either translate convert all the SOAP APIs to REST APIs, or the other way. And then you, there's another third option, which is cross enablement, right? So if you have a REST API, and then you can expose that SOAP, or you have a SOAP API, you expose that REST. So we're going to use we'll talk about how to expose SOAP API to the REST API, which is more interesting. Anyone interested to expose the REST as a SOAP? Not many people, right? So we're right on. So we have a product in development right now. So it's called vSphere REST API. So it's very different from the vAPI, which some of your folks already took a look. So vAPI and the API we're designing is totally different. So vSphere REST API we're doing is using exactly the same model as the vSphere API. No change over there. We just expose the SOAP as the REST. You can think of as an adapter. So with this approach, we can do a lot more than the normal SOAP APIs. For example, you can do the caching, right? And you can do the scale out to manage different vCenter with the same API. But front end, it looks like the same, looks like one. So here is the architecture look like. Right, on the front, so in the middle is the API server. It can connect to different vCenter servers or ESXi servers. And then over here, it talk a traditional way of SOAP API. And then over here, we expose it to the REST API. So this is like adapter and also aggregator. Now, here we use the Swagger to show you how this API can be used. Right? When you open, so this is in a development machine. So the API running on local as the browser. So you see the local host over here. And then we load the Swag. Swag is for documentation, but at the same time, you can also try it out. So over here, you see, very familiar, right? So the service instance auto object model is exposed as resource in the REST terminology. Now, we have the basic authentication once you log into the system. And then now we can go with the first object. So this is allow you to connect to different vCenter server or ESX server. what you have is you say post service instance, and then you give basic information, say which IP address or fully qualified name of the vCenter or ESX you want to connect to, and a username and password. And once you're done, and then say you click on the execute, and then it's done. So that vCenter is added to the API server. Now let's do something interesting, right? So over here, you have the virtual machine object we use, I think, as a resource in the REST API terminology. And then you can see this get all the virtual machine, the namespace out there will show you all the virtual machines available in the system. Right, so you see the type of this virtual machine, the ID, right, and what's the full path in the hierarchy. Now with this, you get all the list, and then you might think, well, I really want to know particular properties. Say how is my virtual machine is running, is VMware tool is installed, or lots of information. So you can two different ways to do it, right? So you can say the virtual machine and then give the ID to it. And then once you get an ID, and then you will see every property associated with this particular virtual machine. So this is the JSON format. If you're familiar with the vSphere API itself, you know this what it means. Now, this is maybe overkill, because a lot of times you just need like a big tree. I just need a couple nodes of information out there. Now we have a choice over here, right? So you can add more property name out there, and you can even combine those together and drill down to the different nodes. What I'm saying over here is, I put a runtime.power and then guest tool status, and then you give this two properties, and then what showed you, you see the return. See, runtime power state is powered off, and tool status is not running, right? So you can add as many as properties in the URL, and then we'll get that for you. So this is the power of the REST API. Now, you may think, well, that's good to read something, but how I do something? And we have designed the post method. Every action we associate with the object, it was going to post it in this way. So the virtual machine name, ID, and then method name. Then we have an ID, and then because this parameter is optional, so we just put it empty over here. And then once you're done, you execute it, and then we'll see the return. So you will get a return. This is task object, and then we have the task ID. So with that task ID, you can go to the task resource and grab that information. Very easy. So in summary, this REST API is same as SOAP, vSphere SOAP API. The URL pattern is very simple. Right? You put a server name, object types. You can optionally have vSAN ID out there, and mob, and you can get a property, and then you take action. Very simple. Almost, I would say, zero learning curve out there. Now, this is about the bridging, how from the SOAP API to the REST API. So I'm going to second I'll talk about the API gateway. So API gateway is essentially a reverse proxy. What it does is take the request and then translate and forward to the backend server. So you can connect to different servers in this way. The value add out there is you can do a lot more things otherwise impossible, right? So authentication, you can centralize the metering, you can centralize, you can do the centralized logging, a lot of things. There's an API gateway. There's a couple of open source projects out there you can try it out. At a minimum, if you have like an NGX, you can do a very, very basic this kind of architecture. Now, the last one we're going to talk about is a DB layer approach. Basically, we have a DB server running over here, collect all those information, and expose this data to the front end. And then also expose the search API. So everything of our infrastructure is searchable out there. So the unification is on the DB level. So everything, we do the index, and this is probably the least effort to get everything about your infrastructure unified. So this approach also had the advantage, which is if you go beyond VMware, if you go to like AWS or other clouds, similar thing. You just need an additional adapter for that. So this product, we also expose the search API. It's very, very simple. So I would like to give you a little bit since this is our search product. This is a GUI will look like, right? So you can do a lot of different things. And then this is the format of the search of the API, REST API exposed. This, the server, and then the DB, and then the call name. In the VMware case, is VMware stock symbol, and then the resource type, and then you can search. And then you can grab all your inventory structure. So the underlying is a sample of the REST API look like. Now, this is very easy to do cross products search, get hold of anything you want. Now, here is the a sample scripting. I wish I could do the live, but basically, this is a shell script. You can talk to the API and grab the information you want. And this is shell script. And next, I'll show you, this is Python. So same thing, it's a bit longer, but mostly it's authentication, those boilerplate code. Now this one is JavaScript. And then you can use Node.js and do things very easily. And this is PowerShell, and which is based on the PowerShell commandlets. Now, so the conclusion is, VMware Management API is pretty powerful and also extensive. It can do a lot of things. And so we talk about the different strategies of Unify VMware APIs in terms of the scale, in terms of the format. We talk about 3 strategies: the bridge, the SOAP to REST, using database middle layer, or use API gateway. So VMware has done a good job to put everything about the development related information. So you can check out the code.vmware.home, and then that can get everything about the development, DevOps, everything. So there's a Slack channel. So a lot of people very active out there. You can get an instance feedback. So you can also know a lot of folks out there. There's an API SDK channel. Feel free to sign up. So here is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me. If you're interested in live demo, just hold on over there. I will stay here for a little while, and feel free to grab me. That's about it. Thank you very much.